I'll tell you one thing about Iran, and I was talking earlier with Lee Camp, so please go check out the interview with him. We spoke about Iran, and there are a couple of things I thought I'd repeat here, or touch on here, which I have already a couple of weeks ago, but nevertheless, right now you're seeing in the news this mantra, this slogan that the regime is going to fall. There have been protests for 5 weeks. There's that Iranian woman who competed, I think where did she compete? Was it in Korea? Without a hijab, so she removed her veil and competed, even though it's against the rules. And, basically people who are saying that the protests are not dying down, they're actually getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Now, that first of all, that's not true. The protests were really in the first couple of days. What's happening after that, I think you've had 24 police that have been killed. And I don't even know how many wounded, but basically it's turned from protests into riots. Now, the thing here is that, there's nothing wrong with protesting. And Lee and I were talking about this. I think he said that he supported every, police protest there ever was. But let me just kind of draw a comparison here. When we think about George Floyd protests in the U.S., those were enormous. I don't know any protests anywhere that were that big, right? So you had all 50 states. You had people protesting because of George Floyd being killed by the police. And that was on video. Like, you actually had that on tape. It was proven in court. He was killed by lack of oxygen with the knee on his neck, which, by the way, the Israelis do to the Palestinians all the time. And that's how he was killed. And no one was saying, the regime is about to fall. Let's go do regime change in America. Although, again, I think a lot of people in the comments right now are going to make a joke and say, no, that would be great. That would be lovely. Okay, but I'm saying seriously, no one actually advocated for regime change in the U.S., right? No one was saying that, Donald Trump should be taken out and, we're going to put in some foreign-backed puppet or whatever. There was no talk about this. It was just accepted that, okay, in countries, people protest when the cops do dumb shit, right? Or bad shit, evil shit. Now, the thing is, with Iran, where is the proof? Like, the only evidence we have, the only evidence, actual evidence, is a video of her collapsing and then being carried away. There is no evidence of her being beaten. And I'm not saying she wasn't. I'm just telling you what I have. Unless one of you has a secret video, please send it to me. But I don't have that. I only have what is out there. And there is no evidence of that. Now, let's say, okay, they actually did do it, right? Let's assume that the Iranian security forces, they actually killed her and they beat her to death, which would be wrong, which would be heinous. Why does it now become about the hijab? The police killing an innocent, poor young woman is not the same thing as let's get rid of the hijab. And if you're in the West, and you're not even Muslim, and you have no connection to this region, on what basis are you talking about the hijab, right? You don't have to support it, but don't start acting like an expert. Even in the Middle East, even inside the Ummah, in the Muslim community, people don't agree with each other 100% of the time. You'll have one Islamic scholar who might say hijab is mandatory, but the burqa is not. And then another might say, actually, neither are mandatory. And then one might say both of them are mandatory, right? So even among Muslim scholars, these are people who are literally experts and specialized in theology and the Quran, they don't even agree with each other all of the time. So on what basis are you telling people who are Muslim not to wear hijab or that this is oppressive for them? Many Muslim women would completely disagree with you. They would say, no, this has nothing to do with oppressive. This is self-respect. I put this because it's my religion and so on. So I don't like this Western arrogance of telling people in other countries and people of different religions what is good for them and what their religion is. Now, I'll tell you my point of view is that, but I'll also tell you extra, my mother's side of the family are Syrian Christian, so there's a minority in Syria, and in Syria it's secular. Okay, there's separation between religion and state. And in Syria, you don't have to wear hijab. You can do whatever you want, and that's fine. I am not against or for it. It's not my business. It's just not my business. But I'm not going to go and start telling people like, oh, well, look, in Syria we do it this way, so you guys should also do it that way. No, especially, in Syria, if you're Christian, you don't go and start telling Muslims what, how you're lecturing them about Islam, and Muslims don't come and lecture you about Christianity. It's not ignoring each other. No, it's I like coexistence instead of tolerance. Because tolerating is like you're accepting something that begrudges you, that annoys you. No, it's not that. People don't annoy each other. There's coexistence, and that's logical because these religions come from Syria. They come from the Levant. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, literally were birthed and came from this area of the world. So obviously you're going to have people from all of these ethnic groups and religious groups, literally dozens, too many to count. And they all live with each other peacefully, and I love that, right? And you have Christian minority in Palestine, Christian minority in Iraq. We are not persecuted. We are treated with respect and like equals, and everything is lovely. But again, just because Syria is secular, I'm not going to go and start telling people in Iran their business. And then the thing here is that with these protests and the Western narrative, they go from hijab to... So first it was the security forces killed this poor woman. Let's get rid of the hijab, and now let's get rid of the government. Regime change. I thought you'd say that. Of course they want regime change. That's how who benefits from regime change? Israel benefits because Iran does not recognize Israel. Iran supports the Palestinians. Iran supports Hezbollah, which kicked Lebanon, which kicked the Israelis out of Lebanon, and then beat them again in 2006, and is stronger than ever today. Iran supports Syria, which also does not accept Israel. Israel is illegally occupying Syria. Iran supports the Yemenis, the Houthis. Iran is supporting the Hashd al-Sha'bi, the PMU, which is the popular mobilization units in Iraq. Iran supports Venezuela, right? Iran is cool with China, is cool with Russia. And, you know, who does this anger? The Israelis. They don't like Iran's foreign policy. If you think for 1 second that people in Israel care about women in Iran, you are smoking something heavy, man. They couldn't care less about anyone in Iran. They don't care about women in Iran. They don't care about children in Iran. They don't care about men in Iran. They don't care about Iran. They want to get rid of Iran because Iran actually stands up for people who are oppressed. Do you understand? Iran does not tolerate Israeli, Zionist, and imperialist Western bullshit. That's why they're trying to get rid of Iran. They've been trying to do that since 1979, right? Because they're, you know, before that, they had Iran under the jackboot. The British were taking the oil. The Americans were taking the oil. You know, they had and giving it weapons and making it the regional policemen. They literally did a coup in the country. They did a coup in 1953 because Mossadegh nationalized the oil. So that's no-go, right? So the West and Israel are the ones who profit the most from regime change. They want to get rid of the government in Iran because of the foreign policy of Iran, not because of the hijab. If you seriously believe that this is about women's rights, you're an idiot. And again, I don't like this term like, oh, only women in the West have rights. Like, what are you implying? That people treat women like animals in everywhere that is outside the West? That's fucking bullshit, and you know that. You know that. I'll tell you another thing. These tweets that they're putting out on the official Israeli Twitter account, okay? And look what they're posting here. This nonsense propaganda. Get ready for some cringe, man. I'm sorry. Get ready for some cringe.
We support Iranian women.
We support you.
Israel, love you.
The women of Israel will always stand with you.
We will always remember you, Marsa.
We will never forget you.
We will never forget you.
Every woman deserves to be free.
You are in our hearts.
Israel love you. They'll never forget you. Go get your goddamn colonizing ass back to Europe, motherfucker. Stick your goddamn business out of Iran. You got no business there. They're trying to interfere in Iran since day one. They despise Iran. If you care about women in Iran, why are you making sure they can't buy medicine for their children? Huh? Why you have them under your sanctions regime? They don't care about them in Israel. They don't care about them, or occupied Palestine. They don't care about them in the West. And if you actually think they do, you're an idiot. You are an idiot, and you don't understand anything about geopolitics. And just because there are internal issues, because again, I'm not saying everyone in Iran loves the government. Of course they don't. There is no country on earth where everybody just loves the government. You always have people who dissent. You have people who are not okay with the government for whatever reason. But every time someone protests in the West, in France, like you're seeing today, in the last days, in Germany, and you're going to see a lot more because of the sanctions blowing up in their faces. When people protest in the UK, when they protest in America, do you suddenly start screaming for regime change? What is this? People are not allowed to dissent in their society without you coming in and sticking your fucking hand in the cookie jar and trying to get rid of the government there for your foreign policy goals. What is this? Let people be. And they always do this, right? So, in Syria in 2011, they were saying, oh, the police killed this boy, and then they killed another boy, and they made it about like those couple of individuals, and that this supposedly sparked, it was the spark for the revolution. No, it wasn't. Number one, I don't even know if that's true. I'm not saying they're angels in the Syrian government, that there are no angelic governments, but even if it's true, how do you go from this government killed one of its own citizens, and that was bad, to, hey, let's give weapons to Al-Qaeda and just start, pumping in millions of dollars to overthrow the Syrian government? What escalation is that? Yeah, that doesn't give you the right to do that. So, I'm not surprised that there are people who just don't get it with Iran, because, and it's disappointing, because you have people who are, they're capable of critical thinking skills. They call out the media and they call out the West with a lot of things, but then when it comes to Iran, they'll start repeating the same State Department talking points and Foreign and Commonwealth Office talking points. That's very disappointing. You should know better. If Iranians want to make a change in their own government and they want to make a change at home, then let them do that, and they will do that if that's their destiny and if that's what is written, right? But the State Department, the FCO, the West coming in and meddling, that is not grassroots. That is not the Iranians. That's somebody else. And we know this game because they played it in Syria and they played it in lots of countries. I'll just end by saying one last thing. Any news outlet or magazine or newspaper or journalist or reporter or politician who calls governments in Syria and Iran and Venezuela regimes is themselves a propagandist, okay? They are themselves propagandists and part of a regime. Because when you say, oh, that's the Biden administration, right? That's the Obama government. And then you say that's the Iranian regime, the North Korean regime. You're going to sit there and tell me that what you have is not a regime? No. You're using that term selectively on purpose to condition people into buying your horse shit about global South. So you can justify sanctions, war, drone strikes, counterintelligence, and so on. Intelligence activities, and then, meddling in that country's internal affairs. That's why they do it. They try to condition you. Like, oh, look at those barbarians over there with their regimes. The people over there are so stupid, right? They're all brainwashed and sheep, and they don't understand, and we have to come and teach them. The white man has to come and educate them about what's better for them. We must civilize them. This is their mantra, right? This is where it comes from. And we ain't having it. So fuck off.